We've got Chris Paul, who's the GM of Audience on Demand for Vivaki, so controls a huge number of dollars going through that platform in a very innovative way.
And Chris, formerly of Digitas, so very digital.
Absolutely right. Ran the Amex business at Digitas. He's been in the Publicis for 6 years, and I think he's probably the only speaker who graduated with a degree in comparative religion, right? So it was the obvious career choice, was digital media. Pierre, thank you. Good night, everybody. Pierre Richet, who is the CEO of NEC Display Solutions. He runs the entire display business for these guys, and it's an absolutely great business with screens in digital play space, but also in lots and lots of other commercial locations. And he also founded Vukunet, which we'll talk a little bit about, which is a web-based ad-serving platform. His background is at InFocus and Canon, among other places. We've got Joe Esposito, who many of you know is VP of Product and Operations at Spafax Networks. Joe is, and if you don't know about Spafax Networks, for the three of you that don't, it's part of 10th Avenue, it's part of Rupert Day's domain, with a mission to become the leading global company targeting on-the-go audiences. And these guys have put together SN Exchange, which is an exchange for digital place-based, as well as an ad-serving, basically a DSP. In our space. So in a sense, first to market there from a major agency holding company. Joe's ex-Kinetic and also ex-DMG. Remember them. Michael Provenzano will be joining us, and Michael is one of the founders of Vistar Media. Vistar is the first universal demand-side platform for location-based video for our sector. He's an ex-Penn material science graduate, and more importantly, one of the founders of Invite Media, which does basically, in a way, very much what Vistar does in the display space.
I may suggest,
they might have quit.
Why don't we start with these
possible.
two? I think it's fascinating that the most technologically advanced panel has got the most digitally challenged microphone setup. Oh, here we go. Great, welcome. Come up. Now I can leave. Good
classic.
to see you. How's everything? Pleasure. All right, guys, you're on.
They got the memo that it was tomorrow. And the last panelist I'll tell you a little bit about is Mitch Weinstein, who is the SVP of Ad Operations at Universal McCann. And so he comes from a very strong ops and technology background. Prior to where he joined in 2008, he was the Director of Sales Planning and Operations at Revolution Health, and has also been on the client side. Chris, Pierre, Joe, Mitch, Michael, welcome. So what I'd like to do, just as to kind of define this space a little bit, is show you some of the numbers that we're talking about in terms of definition of terms. What is programmatic? How high, how fast? Well, let's first talk about what programmatic is. Transactions, and this is the way Magna Global describes it, transactions between buyers and media owners via new technologies to improve the discovery, negotiation, and workflow. And the global ad revenue from programmatic ad buys is expected to reach $12 billion this year, with US revenue taking the lion's share and growing from $7.4 billion to $17 billion in 2017, representing 83% of all US display-related ad spending. The way to think about programmatic, I think, is for those of you that know like the Facebook API, that's a good way to think about programmatic. The thing that most people seem to be talking about right now, and the hottest area in the space, is real-time bid bought advertising, digital advertising. And so think about that as sort of the Facebook exchange. Global ad revenue from real-time bidding is expected to grow from $2.7 billion last year to $20.8 in 2017. So it's growing at 51% annually on a compounded basis. And the US, the expectation is that it's going to grow from $2 billion last year to $14.4 in 2017. That's about 14% of total digital ad revenue this year in the States, growing to about 41% by 2017, again, according to the study. This is actually an IDC study more than it's a Magna Global study. And it's complicated. Have many of you seen these things, these Lumascapes? This is what the ecosystem of the digital business looks like. And I'm not going to go through any of it because that's probably 3 hours worth. In fact, that was a 3-hour lunch I had with someone who worked with Data Zoo. But what you really need to think about is how agencies and networks reach consumers. And the things that we'll be talking about primarily will be DSPs and exchanges. That's really how the vast majority of these dollars play. So if you look in the top center, top left, or it's just to the left, you see the DSPs. And those are the places, and obviously importantly, the agency trading desks feed dollars into lots of those DSPs. So for us, it's a lot simpler in location-based video, but obviously, this is where a lot of the answers are going to lie in how this sector develops and how we play inside of it. So with that as a background, what I want to have our panelists talk about, and I'd ask our audience to think about, are questions that really go off the page here. Because here's what we're going to cover. Is programmatic superior to the premium sales approach most networks have brought to agencies and advertisers, and why? Is digital place-based or location-based digital enough to attract budgets, digital budgets? Are there other barriers? Is programmatic a remnant strategy, or is it a mainstream premium opportunity? Is it something else? What's the state of the technology as it relates to our networks and the machines that need to feed those networks? What has to happen next? And then we'll ask our panelists what percentage of digital place-based will be programmatic in 2014 and 2017. So before we get into those questions, I'd like to turn it over to the panel and give them each a minute or two to tell you about what they do and their experience in digital place-based. I'd like to start at the far end with Michael Provenzano.
Thanks, Jim. It's been about 2 years that Vistar's been in digital place-based media. And what Vistar does is we're an ad exchange that allows audience-based buying for digital out-of-home networks. That includes place-based and can go anywhere into billboards, let's say. Anything that's really not your personal device. And so what our company does day to day, right, we have the demand side business, which is going after digital ad agencies primarily and some broadcast buyers to try to get them to buy these screens and give them reasons to buy the screens. And that's been the big thing right now is we've spent the last year and a half working with the majority of networks like Jim's and getting them all together on a single platform so that these can be bought efficiently. And now it's going back to the buyers and saying, well, they're all here. And the feedback I get from the buyers is, that's great, Michael, that you have all these screens, but give me a reason why I need to buy them. Show me an ROI to these screens. So that's the problem that we are now faced with and that we've been working on for, I'd say, the past 8 months. It's been our primary focus, and we'll probably get into that in a bit, but the answer is heavily around mobile data, and we'll talk about that in a sec.
Absolutely. Thanks. Mitch.
So I'm the ad ops guy. I'm the guy that oversees all the trafficking, all the delivery of the ads, both in digital and in TV as well, you know, the broadcast unit. So in the past, we focused specifically on digital, but up until a year ago, we started including TV as part of our group, which is a big change for us. We oversee everything that is ad tech related, so my team is responsible for finding new solutions, new innovative concepts to bring to the planning teams to help them reach people and reach their audiences more effectively. So everything from verification to viewability to new rich media ad units, new ways of serving ads, new ad serving platforms. We get involved in all of that, and we're constantly looking for new solutions to bring to the teams because there's so much change in this industry. It's unbelievable. But we have been recently focused on some of the digital place-based initiatives, thanks to the guys at Vistar. I mean, all this, to be honest, is relatively new to me from the digital side, but I think the concept of Vistar of bringing a DSP-type focus to the digital world is really something very interesting, being able to buy media in that same concept where you're buying in real time based on data inputs. That's a game changer. I mean, that's a whole new area that we in digital haven't really touched on very much, and I think that's going to be a big part of what we're doing in the future.
Thanks, Joe.
So Spafax Networks started about 2 years ago, coincidentally just around the same time as Vistar was kicking things off, where we really just wanted to take the best practices and disciplines, so to speak, of digital advertising and bring those to reach the consumer on the go. So turn off your laptop, turn off your TV. That consumer is out and about. How can we reach them most effectively, most efficiently? So we're really just doing that through technology, through data sources. Vistar is actually our technology provider, so this is kind of an interesting conversation that we'll be able to have. But yeah, I mean, that's the core of everything, and trying to bring more standardization to this space, because as we've heard multiple times throughout the day, there's a lot of fragmentation and there's a lot of hurdles that we all just sort of need to overcome to bring more dollars to the space. So that's sort of been our lead and our charge throughout the past couple of years.
Great. Pierre, Vukunet.
Vukunet. So as Jim said, you know, I run the NEC business of screens and projectors and all that stuff. So for many years now, in the early 2000s, a lot of people would want to start ad networks, and that they had no money, and they'd come to me, say, yeah, no, can we do a rev share? You give me the screens, I'll give you % of my revenue and this and that. And I'm really not into the free stuff, but you know, we tried. It worked. We tried with somebody who made a lot of money off of us when she sold a company, and I won't say who, but whatever. It worked out. But we did realize that there was a lot of technology challenges in this space, like a fragmentation from the way people buy, but also from a technology point of view. Because you have to get the content to the screen, and you got to report, you know, the proof of play, so that's when we said we set out to build sort of a double-click model, like, you know, at real-time inventory, you know, at real-time for the buyers to see the inventory, inventory management for the sellers, and then obviously, you know, real-time proof of play. So there's a lot. I mean, this industry is fragmented, we just thought that without a technology breakthrough, it wasn't going to scale. And we set out to help the industry scale with better technology.
Thanks. And Chris, can you tell us about Audience on Demand?
I can. To answer Barry's question, after I was kicked out of the seminary, I eventually found my way to Vivaki, and right now look after Audience on Demand. Audience on Demand's charter is to bring a programmatic buying approach to as many active media channels as possible for the sake of publicists and its agencies, and now a handful of client direct accounts that we're working on. So really our approach to digital out of home has been similar to our approach in other digital channels, which is to evaluate the triumvirate of inventory partners, technology partners, and data partners, and put the best possible buying platform together that bridges, you know, Vivaki's own technology with the technology that we work with our partners to co-develop, and then create as seamless and as efficient as possible a buying platform to connect our clients with the media channels and the audiences that they're looking for. So that's been
So who runs it? You know, who operates it? Are planners using the platform, or you know,
Yes.
how do you? Okay.
So in our specific iteration of the trading desk, it's been part of our value proposition since the beginning to say, you know, you've got actual resources, actual humans on staff who really represent an extension of your agency team. That's how we interact with publicists. So the strategy teams on the agencies are the ones interacting with the clients directly to help synthesize the media plans and provide the strategy and talk about the different channels that they think make sense to meet those marketing objectives. And then they come over to AOD when there is an opportunity to execute on any part or all, in some cases, of that marketing strategy programmatically and using addressable channels, which is really what Audience on Demand is all about.
In a way, is it sort of the front end of the trading desk, or is that not exactly the right way to look at it?
I mean, that is the trading desk. I mean,
Okay.
that's what we're doing. I mean, the trading desk moniker is popular right now. It doesn't really apply as well here because we're only buying media. We're not actually selling it. Our buys are all based on authorizations that come from the end client of the agency. So it's not a trade happening at that point.
Thanks.
But as I said, you know, the digital place-based has been under review for the better part of the year. Talking to a lot of the folks who are here on stage with me, as well as some other partners, to, as I said, you know, bring together the best possible product.
Great. Well, Joe, I want to feed this one to you first, because you've come from the traditional side and now into the digital side. You know, we as networks have built these sales forces of sales professionals who have, you know, deep media backgrounds by and large, and we've tried to be idea-driven, data-driven, et cetera, and we're sort of selling in a way the old way, when we're calling on a lot of agencies and planners and clients. Now, here's this programmatic and perhaps soon to be real-time bid environment. Is this a better mousetrap, and why?
It's a good question to kick off, given everyone that's in this room right now. No, I mean, to me, just coming from my background and buying all of these networks direct for 6, 7, probably 8 years at this point, and then trying to go and sell them up the channels through the agencies, eventually to the client, those immediate objections are just always come your way, where, okay, but is the person really watching, and are you really reaching that audience? So what we're really trying to do is, by going this separate route of, can we go after digital dollars? Can we go after local broadcast dollars by bringing in the right data and the right technology to do that, where the supply partners can go and sell their inventory direct, whereas we can sort of, yes, aggregate, but more of create a network of networks, so to speak, where I'm bidding on the right spots in the right environment at the right time, not all locations at all times, to reach that audience while they're on the go. So it is a completely different sales approach. We try to get in at the strategy level as opposed to the at-a-home buyer or the digital buyer or the broadcast buyer. It's like, let's get in and really hone in on what is the brand's objective and get into the brief and say, well, what can we do? What data can we utilize to find that audience and hone in, and rather than just throw everything to the wall and hope it sticks, bring mobile, bring data, bring social into the mix and just, sell it.
So mobile and social, a big piece of it. Michael, you want to try to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's actually additive, right? So the way people are selling their networks directly today is very similar to what Chris Magel was talking about in the previous panel, where you're buying content, you're buying context, right? Whereas when you're talking about these programmatic systems, typically your clients are focused on buying audiences at scale, and those buyers tend to be the digital buyers and the broadcast buyers versus the out-of-home guys.
I'll just add to that. I mean, I think it's similar to what you've seen in digital, where it hasn't replaced direct sales teams. There's still a big need for them. There's still a lot of types of packages and content integrations and sponsorships that need to be sold directly and need to be worked out, and there's lots of logistic details that need to go into that type of thing. It's a good complement to everything. I mean, I think they work hand in hand. I don't think it's going to replace the direct sales approach. I think it complements it, and it makes buying more efficient in certain cases. In certain cases, it may not be the most efficient way of handling it. So there's definitely a balance there. It's not like it's going to replace salespeople altogether.
Exactly. There's always those requests. Just as many sort of audience requests that I get, I also get I want to go and buy X network. I want to be in this environment. So obviously we're going to fulfill whatever comes our way. But yeah, I mean, it's both requests come in from the agency and client side, no doubt.
We still see plenty of salespeople directly at the agency on the digital side. So it hasn't gone away.
Does AOD ever see salespeople?
Constantly. I mean, it's a different conversation, right? We're talking with them about not as much about the inventory, not as much about sort of the experiential advertising side, the sponsorships, the integrations, which I agree with my panelists are critical and never going away, and these two things are complementary. But the folks that we're talking to for the most part are either technologists, where we're talking about integrating data sources, we're talking about capturing performance data, so that we're able to activate and optimize these buys much more quickly as humanly possible. But then on the other side, we're actually talking to a lot of publishers right now who are very interested in making their other, up until now, have not made their inventory available programmatically, who are starting to understand that based on some of the numbers that you've shown, this isn't something that's going away anytime soon. If we do it the right way, we can make sure that it doesn't become a commoditized scenario. Programmatic buying does not necessarily mean open exchange buying.
Right.
There are other ways to execute programmatic buys that maintain the integrity of the context, maintain the integrity of the advertiser connections, and this is something that it's a myth that we really want to work hard to dispel. And I think place-based is one of those ideal opportunities, video being another one, where you can show that programmatic is not necessarily a bad word.
And so what it essentially becomes is a little bit more of a frictionless way to transact almost in real time, as opposed to saying, we've got this buy, it's somewhere out in the future, let's figure out how we're going to plan against it.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it was kind of inevitable. Once the pipes handled two-way communication and a buy could be executed based on information that can be transferred in 100 milliseconds, then it was naturally going to go this way, just because simply at face value it will make your those individual ad messages that you're placing out there more accurately targeted and more efficient. So.
Well, and so you talked about efficiency, you talked about data. Are we, and some of that's the analytics on the back end, right? Obviously, it's a big piece of it when it comes down to optimizing. Is this sector digital enough? Is it, we are digital, and there are lots of the great qualities that make digital, but there are also certain things that may not be in the most traditional display type or one-to-one type sense. Are we digital enough to be considered truly digital through these technologies?
I would say no, but I'm biased. I mean, I think that they answered really well. I mean, I don't understand still why there's this perception that whether a DSP or ad exchange is like a channel conflict to the salespeople. It's like an education that keeps going on every single day, every time I talk to a network owner. Because really, at the end of the day, it's like if you're a business owner and you can increase your revenue, I mean, you're going to want to look at it. And this perception that it's going to drive the CPM down, I think it's totally flawed, because it's incremental. And I'm French. It's incremental, and it's really, why? If you're a business owner, why wouldn't you want more business? And if you can control everything, you control the CPM, you control the offers, you can reject the offers, and you can pinpoint the screen anywhere in the world that you want to advertise to the right customer. I mean, I sometimes I hit my head against the wall. Why it's taking so long?
I think that's a key point for the publishers and the networks to be able to control what they put into these types of marketplaces. They can choose to set the floor for pricing. They can choose to reserve certain inventory, hold some back if they want to create scarcity. Like there's a lot of flexibility that the networks and the publishers have with these types of exchanges and marketplaces, that they can control things for their benefit.
And yeah, absolutely. And just as far as the question of is it digital enough? Pure screen running spots with content surrounding it, no. Right? And I think Michael will attest to this too. Like when we go and sell to, separately, but when we go and sell to digital buyers and planners and people that are coming from that digital world, we're always met with the challenge of, well, where's the measurement? Like just getting those, Nielsen impressions or whatever it is, it's not really enough for a digital buyer. They want that click-through rate. They want that engagement rate. So I think, and this is a lot of what we talk about with partners like a Blue Byte or whoever it is, that can bring mobile to these screens to create have that call to action on the spot, literally request of the consumer to engage with that screen, and then you get that engagement rate for the total number of impressions served. That is way more digital than where we're at right now with just purely running spots.
Want to try to add to that?
I'd comment on the race to the bottom CPM question, because that's pretty common.
And then I might also.
I think it's important to understand where the history of that data point came from. That's in reference to online display advertising. As you guys know, when you go to a website, there are lots and lots of websites and lots of banner ads. And essentially, the inventory, the supply in that ecosystem is infinite. This is something Chris Magel actually talked about last night as well. It's an infinite amount of supply. Whereas when you look at digital place-based and the networks that make it up, you're talking about a fairly niche, finite amount of inventory that is premium and brand safe, which is completely different than what you're dealing with when you're talking about online websites. And the capital cost, as you know, of putting up one of these networks, the barrier to entry is extremely high, versus putting up a website I can do with $0 and 5 minutes. So I think you're talking about two totally different types of inventory. You can't compare the mediums apples to apples and say that, oh, the CPMs are going to do the same thing online display is, because they honestly have nothing to do with each other.
And I think that also adds to some of the confusion on the agency side as to who handles this type of transaction in terms of buying digital place-based video. Is it a digital team? Is it a TV person, broadcast person? Is it both? Is it neither? Is it an out-of-home person? I think the agencies are still trying to.
How do you reconcile that at UM?
we're still trying to figure it out.
Where's it leaning?
We have an integrated investment team, so we no longer have a specific digital team and a specific broadcast team. In theory, the two teams are integrated and should be able to make these types of decisions. So it doesn't fit neatly into a bucket of digital or broadcast or TV. So that's sort of the conundrum.
Would you, actually I want to hear Chris's perspective on that as well.
So across
where.
Across Publicis, I would say that it is just, we're again still trying to figure it out much in the same way. AOD, we're trying to put a stake in the ground that says the digital place-based and the mobile programmatic channels right now carry a lot of similar targeting capabilities, carry a lot of similar audience capabilities, so we're putting them both under the banner of mobility and saying that many in the same ways, if you bring it back to the strategy, not pay so much attention to who's buying it, but think about what you're buying it for, you can actually have a very cohesive look at what you're doing on a mobile device and what you might be doing in digital place-based that complement each other very, very well and carry the same sort of strategic import for the marketing plan. So that's the AOD perspective on it.
Interesting. Just to weigh in a little bit on this, I think, from a network perspective, I think what we're talking about here is inevitable. It's inevitable not just in our little corner of the world, but in all media. But the only data that I have really seen, and the only thing I can use as something where people have skied before us, is in display, where the pricing's been blown to shit. And so, is there any evidence to the contrary from those of you that have learned in this space thus far that pricing isn't necessarily at the risk that many of us feel that it might be?
I think a fair comparison is when you think about most of the premier online video networks, particularly if you think about Hulu, right? Hulu was worth nothing when they put up content, but it's quality content, and now they literally in the TV upfront today. That's a definition of screens, if you will, and video that is of quality and is brand safe that advertisers want to be on. So those are going to command higher CPMs, and those CPMs are just going to go up.
Similar to the point you're making before, agree generally in the concept that if all the players in the space are playing above board and by the rules, there should be nothing that puts that immense downward pressure on pricing. You're buying audiences. Audiences are always valuable. Mm-hmm. And most audiences, the more we create ability to target them, will only go up in value as more advertisers are trying to go after the same people. A higher income, heavy traveler type target that everybody's going after. The problem is that in display, one of those things that really created that perception of an infinite supply is simply bad acting on the part of a lot of publishers to bury impressions down at the bottom of the page, double up on impressions that run, and then you have the more sophisticated sort of fraud networks out there that by placing all these layers in between the buyer and the seller makes it easier for them to dig in at any one of those connections and start creating fraudulent traffic. So I think the vigilance that maybe display was a little late in bringing to the party, which is now blowing up like a cottage industry, video and place-based and others have an opportunity to be that vigilant from the get-go, educate our clients on the fact that a lot of places where they are seeing those really, really depressed CPMs and thinking they're getting a great deal out of it is actually inventory that nobody ever sees or was created by a bot. So these are the things that we can hopefully nip in the bud.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
The fact that everything is pretty much brand safe in digital place-based, so you can buy it programmatically and compare it to digital in that respect, but it's completely safe. You don't have to worry about using a verification service or a viewability vendor or some sort of fraudulent detection service. Right. It's a very safe environment.
Yeah,
that's important.
There's not one agency that we talked to that hasn't said that they like to get a third-party reporting of proof of play. That's what everybody gets excited about. So I don't know why it would. That's only going to drive the CPM up.
Hopefully, yeah. I agree with you. And look, I think this association is made up of a lot of great networks with great audience and none of the problems that Chris just talked about. So what's it going to take yet? Yeah, exactly. Right. There's a couple people thinking about ways to game the system, I'm sure, maybe even in this audience. But what's it going to take to start to see the trading desk volume, the big DSP, the big ad network volumes flowing into, knowing some of the quality, some of the audience, the quality of metrics, the proof of performance, the Nielsen measurement? What's it going to take to start seeing a lot more dollars flowing through these platforms into our sector. I actually want to hear everybody's perspective on that.
For me, it is a lot about those metrics. I think that there's quality in terms of just getting that third-party audit that the ad was actually seen, it ran where we thought it ran. But I think being innovative, to the point made during the previous panel, about packaging up a sort of a different approach to connecting with an audience, demonstrating that there's some activity taking place. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice in the digital space if we're not thinking interactive first. Otherwise, we are going to fall into the same sort of, run into the same issues that traditional media always has by not having that ability to show that connection and demonstrate that happened. So I think if you have those two things and you start to, again, make the connections between the inventory and the buying platforms, then I think you'll see exactly the same wave of interest and investment.
I think to add on that, the sell isn't to the trading desks. Right. Trading desks need the demand from the planning and buying teams. Yeah. And once they get the demand and the requests from the people who are controlling the media budgets, that's when the trading desks will really jump on it and move forward. It seems like you guys are pretty far ahead.
That's
in
exactly.
That respect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's education. I mean, this is all new to this space. So you just want to make sure that all the strategy teams and all the planners who are making those decisions to then kick it to the trading desks, that they know that this is even possible in this space, right? Like the idea of ad serving and the technology and the data and everything that we do, most people don't know that it's there. So as long as we can go out and advocate and educate, eventually the idea of video everywhere and screen agnostic and video neutral and all this stuff that we love and love to talk about, but it will only get there once everyone sort of understands it and realizes that it's possible in this space.
Yeah. And now I'm on for everybody. I mean, I think everybody's got to have a vested interest on the network side, on the agency side, and because it's a lot of education. I mean, it's unbelievable how you visit people that have no idea that this technology is available and that what you guys do, and it's just an ongoing. It takes a very, very long process. Mm-hmm.
Well, and speaking of long processes, the notion of integrating with a number of networks, every single one's been built on pretty much a different platform. I guess I would address this initially to Pierre, Joe, and Michael. What have you learned about the sort of barriers here, and what could you suggest to the networks to try to move along into more automated systems?
Well, that's near and dear to my heart because that's why we're in this business. I mean, because really, when we saw that there's, 300 software companies and every network uses a different one, we just thought that this industry would never scale unless you find a way to send information to a screen without having to write APIs, and that's what we set out to do. I think that's, that you just can't do that. You just can't scale globally if you have to do that. So, the industry's fragmented in every section of the business. Mm-hmm. At the agency level, the networks are all fragmented. Nobody can do a buy of a DMA if they want to. So I mean, it's just got to be all put joined together at every level of the industry, and I think that's a key thing, along with all the problems that we've been talking for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So digital's a model of efficiency compared to.
Well, yeah, we're supposed to be efficient, and it's like the least efficient medium there is from a technology point of view.
Right.
Joe, as far as anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Vistar for the last couple of years, bringing a lot of the networks and the supply partners to integrate, and yeah, I mean, the biggest issue has been everyone working on a different CMS. And then once that integration happens, there's the issue of, well, how old was that technology? Is the integration right? Like, can I actually serve in real time? Can I get the reporting in near real time? Like, when there's that delay on the back end for our humans, because there is a human element to everything that we're doing, when we're trying to report and monitor and pace these campaigns, when I have one network with a shoddy integration versus another, that's in that actual real time, my campaigns are really hard to watch and make sure that I'm going to deliver to the client, who we all want additional dollars from in the next month, to make sure that I'm going to deliver what I set out to deliver. So whatever we can all do as far as improving those integrations, or just, anything. It's exhausting. and Michael's on a much more, worse side than I am. I'm just sort of bringing those conversations to the mix.
No, yeah, and we owe Spafax a lot, of course, because that's how we got introduced to a lot of the people in this room today, and we worked very closely together to bring those guys on board. And I think the biggest difficulty was that you're talking about, again, two problems, right? You're talking about fragmentation in technology and fragmentation in media owners, and you're going one by one to companies like Jim's and saying, I need to teach the business people something about ad serving, exchanges, an entire industry, and get them on board with this concept. And then on the other side, I'm going to Rob, which works with Jim, and I'm saying, hey, your system works like this. It does loops, it does playlists, and it's built for this industry.
And it's fantastic.
And it's fantastic. But by the way, you don't do that, because I say it needs to be like this. So it's a very impedance mismatch problem. And there's been a lot of friction early on, but now I think we're in a really good spot overall in the industry. And things can only get better now, which is very comforting for me to say.
Do you think we get to the necessity for a real-time bid, real-time placed, digital place-based environment? I mean, is that where the networks need to be successful?
I think real-time online is important because the data is frequently updated and it's basically real-time, right? Someone's jumping around from a web page every 7 seconds, and if you're doing, let's say, retargeting, where someone goes to Dell.com and they're finding that person throughout other websites and want to show them that Dell ad again, there's something called frequency capping. So I don't want to show that person 20 Dell ads. If they haven't clicked the first 4, then I'm going to cap that and not keep showing them it. So the data is relevant in online to be real time. However, the data in out of home is not real time. I'd say you could probably see trends on more of a day part basis, like an hourly type thing. Yep. So if you would watch people's cell phones, let's say, and a mobile distribution of people walking through an area, I think you could see a fairly good statistical breakdown of the audience and the density of people in an area if you looked at it hourly, maybe 15, 30 minutes. So I don't think real time is necessary. I'd love it. It makes my life a lot easier, but it's not required, and I understand the huge infrastructure issues that can come along with that request.
I think we have to be careful with the word real time then, because programmatic almost implies real time. Yeah. And if we're going to use the word programmatic, people will automatically assume real time ad serving, real time data, real time response, and we just have to. Those are powerful words, and we have to be careful about how we use them.
And I think there's a definition of terms I tried to get to earlier, which I think programmatic kind of deals with what we do today, but real time is truly real time, right? In a pure online digital sense, right, where you know who it is, and that's sort of where I was wondering if your heads were at. This is where we need to get as a sector, where things can be addressed, bid, bought, and delivered, and then proof of performance in real time.
I think we gotta work to drive a wedge between those two concepts, because they don't mean the same thing. I think real time is a subset of programmatic. I don't think you could have real time without programmatic buying, but you can absolutely have programmatic buying without it being real time. And I think to the point Michael was making about the importance of being able to execute an ad insertion in real time is because in a matter of milliseconds, you have determined that the person on the other side of that screen is the person that you want to reach. So unless you have a need to do that, and unless the data flow coming back from a place-based placement is going to give you that information, you don't really, it's not necessarily to go to that length. However, at the same time, there's a side of real-time marketing that isn't necessarily real-time media buying. It's a side that says there is an event happening, or everything from a very good event to a very bad event happening in a place, and there are screens that could help people in that moment of need, and there could be an opportunity to move on that very quickly. Does it need to go all the way to milliseconds? Maybe not, but do the pipes need to be there for a marketer to react to that opportunity or crisis or whatever it might be? Then we should get closer to that point. That's a big.
By the way, Jim, real time is available today. I mean, if we wanted to send an ad to all these screens in the next 1 minute, we could, and we could report how many people see it. So I mean, it is available. It's not, but figuring out who looked at it real time, we're not quite there today.
Right, and it requires
the real time sending ads and reporting. It is available today.
After some systems integration.
Well, slight.
I'm just saying.
So we have a fairly efficient process in digital for serving ads, through the third-party ad server, where the creative is hosted on an independent platform and it's served out and and sent to the right places at the right times based on data coming in. Which something like that would certainly make a digital place-based environment much more efficient in terms of getting those ads out, and then the data coming back would be validated by this third-party independent system.
Yeah.
So that's something we should probably get to also.
That's a great point. Hey, we've only got a couple minutes left. Are there questions from the audience? Have people thought of anything they'd like to ask? Please.
I imagine clients are going to want to understand and see some transparency in terms of the margins for DSPs. So how will that impact ad agencies and the thought process going forward? Margins in terms of profitability. I imagine agencies will resist it, or?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably me too.
An agency question.
It's an agency
answer that.
question. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an agency, but yeah, I mean, there's always things to be worked out. There's always fees to disclose, but will we get there? Yeah. I mean, that's a really tough question.
I mean, the way we handle it right now is we absolutely disclose the fee percentage of your
Right.
your budget that's going toward working media versus what's going toward enabling that media buy. Just as agencies are transparent with their clients about, if they're running off a commission structure, an FTE structure, something like that. But when you get down to the technology level, our approach has been, we're as publicists and as Vivaki, using our leverage to cut a deal with these technology providers. That's a very private conversation. That's something that we have to keep close to the chest. So at a certain level, transparency simply becomes part of, there's a limit to the transparency that you can provide without jeopardizing your business model.
Yeah, I mean,
and
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, in our core business, we spend a lot, obviously a lot of money advertising our screens. And if the bill's big enough, it comes to me and I see the, ad serving fee at the bottom, and, the agency passes it to us, and I know exactly what I'm paying. So I think that it's very private, because I'm assuming, say, the more you advertise, the lower your ad serving fee is. So it's between the advertising and the client.
We're just in an interesting spot because we're not in an agency, right? So I have to work out separate deals and separate scenarios where, yes, I have to disclose if the client wants it, so I get that deal. Absolutely, we're transparent as we need to be.
I think the issue is the media performing. The margins are not as important if the media is performing and it's doing well and it's efficient and the client is happy with the results. The margins become less important. If the media is not doing very well, then it becomes more of an issue.
Others, please.
At the risk of being naive, years ago there was a company called AdAuction.com. You could put a package together for them, give them inventory, and you could put a floor down as to how much, what the pricing would be that you would tolerate. It could only go that low. If a publisher gave you guys inventory, do they have the same ability to do that? I don't want to take anything less than $10, make it up. $10 cost per 1,000.
Yes.
Does that work that way with you?
Correct.
Yep.
The exchange is a second priced auction. So your floor price, if it's $10, that's what the base of the auction. So you have multiple bidders, you have two people bidding, someone bids $7 is not going to win at all. Someone bids 11, someone bids 12. The guy at 12 is going to win at $11.01.
And if one of you were to buy that at $10, could you turn around and resell it to whomever you chose, one of your clients at 12, 15, 13? Or would you buy it and allocate it to Clorox and to Chevy and to whomever? How would that work?
It's a case-by-case basis.
I mean, on the agency, on the Vivaki, we don't resell. I mean, anything we buy is bought at exactly the price that we've agreed to with the agencies. Even if it's a dynamic CPM, we say, look, it's a dynamic CPM. There's going to be a range, but what we're reporting back to you is what we cleared, in terms of.
Thank you.
Yep.
We have time for one more.
Sure.
And
This
then-
might be a question for more heads of planning, but in terms of your experience with the planning teams, how does it determine client by client in terms of what percentage is going towards programmatic buying of an overall budget versus traditional, integrated media and buying in that way. So how do those budgets kind of migrate, and what's sort of some of the catalysts or variables that say, let's put more money into programmatic versus let's keep X in traditional?
I think with us, it's, initially it's small dollar amounts for certain clients that go into programmatic, and then they figure out, does it make sense? Is it performing? How's it doing against their benchmarks and their KPIs, and what are they looking at? And if it continues to perform and do well, obviously more dollars will flow into it. But it's becoming more and more of a higher percentage of media buying, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, on our side, it's a question of can it be bought programmatically? If it can, then it will. And as we talked about earlier in the panel, there are certain, we call it experiential marketing. Anytime when it's not about necessarily just placing an ad on a page or on a phone or in a video, and it has more to do with more of a deeper content integration, more of an engaging experience, that will, for the foreseeable future, not be in the domain of programmatic. But everything else that can be bought that way, you look at it from the agency's perspective. If I could reach the audience that I'm going for, and I could do it with 1 IO versus 20, I'm going to do that every single time. Yep. And that's, clients love it because it gives their agency people more time to spend on thinking about the client business, less time to think about billing and all the inefficient crap that goes along with buying digital. So if it can be bought programmatically, it will be.
All right, last question in our last minute here. We'll start with Michael and work back down the row. What % of digital place-based dollars are going to be bought programmatically next year and in 2017?
God. You're asking me my revenue, essentially. Right?
No.
That's a good question. I would have to know your revenue, I guess, to calculate the percentage, but I don't know. I think you can imagine next year I'd like to be on a network's balance sheet as 10%, or the P&L, I guess, would be more appropriate. 10% next year, and then hopefully 25 the year after. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow, so you're asking a tough question.
Yeah. No, fair question.
He doesn't know. That's
Yeah.
I would say 5 and 20.
5 and 20 by 17.
20% by 2017.
I bet Joe's going to go higher.
Let's go 7. This is like prices, right? No, 7, 10, and then 25, 30.
You overbid.
I did overbid.
Michael, I think it'll be 20 million this year. So for my revenue, so figure yours out. No, kidding aside, I think this year it'll be less than 5% for sure, and hopefully in 2017 maybe 15-20%.
Yep. Chris,
I don't have anything to dispute any of the numbers that have gone before. All I can say to try to add something is I think the place-based growth will outpace other channels simply because it lends itself so well to programmatic buying as a method of getting there. So look for a fair amount of rapid growth here.
I'm going to say 10 and 50.
Dig it.
Very good.
I want to thank our panelists very much. Michael, Mitch, Joe, Pierre, Chris, thank you.